Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be working on the Mazda 3. We're going to be putting on some big handling upgrades. I'm very excited to be finally putting these parts on the car. So what you're looking at today is a rear anti-sway bar. This is thicker than what would have originally came installed. It also came with some polyurethane sway bar bushings, and so I figured why not upgrade the front with some replacement polyurethane sway bar bushings as well. So for the front end, the polyurethane front sway bar bushings are going to complement the rear anti-sway bar by tightening up the front sway bar a little bit. So the bushings, the polyurethane bushings are stiffer, so it's going to tighten up the front sway bar. It's going to make the front end more responsive. And then the rear sway bar is here. Reason being is because thicker rear sway bar is going to minimize the amount of rear suspension sag in turns, which causes understeer. By having a stiffer rear sway bar, it's going to make the car a lot more planted, and it's going to have a lot more grip around the turns. As you can see, I've already started working on the car. I actually was trying to start this video last night, but I had a hard time removing the front sway bar bushings. That was the first thing I wanted to get out of the way. And so last night all I did was just pretty much figure out how to do it. So that's what I've done. I'm going to tell you how to take off your front sway bar bushings so that you can replace them. All right, so if you come underneath the car, first thing you're going to do is you're going to find this front suspension cross member, and you're going to locate 4 bolts. There's going to be 2 here which hold the lower control arm, and it's going to be the same on the other side right here. So these 2 bolts not only hold the bracket for your lower control arm, but also the bracket for your sway bar bushings bracket. Yeah, your bracket that holds the sway bar bushings in place, and the front lower control arm bracket. Those 2 items are both held by the same 2 bolts on both sides. So here's what the bolts look like. These are 17 millimeter. They're big, and they do require quite a bit of force to take off. So you will need some sort of torque wrench or breaker bar to get them off. I don't have either. Personally, what I like to use is what's called a cheater bar. I basically attach a big pipe to the end of my ratchet, and I use the extra leverage of the pipe to break those bolts loose. Would I recommend that method? No, but in a pinch, it's worked. So yeah, you want to get those 4 bolts off first thing. Before you start everything else, get those 4 bolts off so that you can move around the front sway bar. You can take the bushings out. Real quick before I move on, this is what I mean by cheater bar. You take your ratchet. In this case, this is the biggest ratchet I got. Those bolts underneath for your lower control arm bracket and your sway bar bracket, those 4 bolts are 17 millimeters. They're all 17 millimeters. They're a big socket. So anyways, cheater bar demonstration. You take a piece of plumbing pipe and your ratchet. You would stick one on one end, and then now you have a lot more leverage. You can start pulling from here, and you can turn your ratchet. You turn your ratchet around, either loosening or tightening, and it helps to get those big, really tough bolts out in a pinch. So that's, if you ever heard the word cheater bar, that's what people mean. It's just, garage life hack. Once you get your 4 bolts off, here's how you're going to access your sway bar bushing bracket. Follow the end link to your sway bar, which is going to be this piece right here. And then you're going to follow that piece inside the fender well, the wheel well. And this piece right here, it's, almost dropped my camera. It's kind of halfway out, but it's going to be this piece right here. Hopefully you all can see that. Not very well, but yeah, so I'll show you what the piece looks like separately. I have the other side out. So yeah, what you're going to do is you're going to be able to lift that piece up, and then you're going to pry the sway bar bushing bracket out first. Actually, before you do that, make sure you save your wing nuts. So these are the wing nuts. These are what hold these big 17mm bolts in, and they help to keep the bushing bracket on that piece, so that of course the bracket doesn't move around and your sway bar is held in place. So yeah, make sure that after you take those bolts out, save your wing nuts, keep them in a place where you can find them. So these are the pieces you're going to be taking out. Here is your sway bar bushing bracket, and here is your sway bar bushing itself. This is the original one from my car. This is from the other side that I managed to take out last night. Like I said, I was struggling with it, having to maybe try and figure it out, mainly because there's very little to no information on the internet at all about taking these out. So I didn't really know exactly where the location was. I didn't know exactly how I was going to get them off, because they were pretty stubborn at the point in time. But I found out was you have to take both sides off. I found that out after I'd already taken this end out. But I was struggling with it, trying to like pry it out and stuff like that. But best thing to do in that situation for the sway bar bushings, take both ends out. Like I said earlier, that's the first thing you got to do. Take both ends out and you won't struggle as much. And I'll show you in a minute what I mean by that. Here's the reason why you would want to remove the bolts on both sides. You can move it around. You can scoot it over to your side, whichever side you're working on first. You take the end link, you pull on it, and then you have the bushing now closest to you. So you can start prying out with your hands or some sort of pry tool. The tool I've been using for this, I don't know if you can see, but it's kind of halfway out. I've just been working at it since today morning. But yeah, so this tool we're using, this is actually the tire iron. If you go underneath the trunk in your Mazda 3 where the spare tire is, this is the tire iron. That's what I've been using to pry out that piece, just because it has more leverage. But yeah, you can use a big, long, flathead screwdriver or something equivalent to pry that off. So the point is, you got to pry off the bracket so that you can take the bushing off. And you can see the bushing, that's not a crack, that's just a cutout that they make from the factory, so you can just pull it off. So you take the bracket off, then you can take the bushing directly off the bar. If you can't see, I apologize, tight space. But what I'm doing is I'm taking my tire iron and prying up against one of the ends of the sway bar bracket so that it lifts off. And then I'm holding the actual sway bar itself from lifting up and down with my other hand. It's not easy because there's part of the subframe right here, the way it is chamfered, it's curved, it's not flat. So I keep sliding my pry tool off of that. So it's not that easy, and this is what I was struggling with last night. Imagine having both ends in though. Yeesh. No wonder I spent so much time yesterday. It's almost out. I can feel it. Yep, there it is. Oh yeah. Just gonna let it drop underneath, and there we go. That's not rust, that's mud. There's a bracket. Now let's get the bushing. Should come out actually a little easier because it's rubber. Kind of push on it with your fingers. It's almost there, it's just kind of stuck on something now. Might be wondering why I don't go underneath, and it's because not a lot of space there. Not a lot of space here either, but there's even less down over there. There's not a lot of space between the camera and where I'm working because there's a wall here. Be helpful if you have more space. There's a tip. Have more space. Have more workspace. That's a good idea. Now I got both hands on it. I can really pry at it. There we go. Ah, hallelujah. All right, and there's the old original front sway bar bushing. Put that right over there. All right, so here are the old parts. They actually look to be in pretty good shape for over 100,000 miles on them. And then here are the new parts. If you're gonna get bushings, you're gonna get your bushings changed or upgraded. You're definitely going to need bushing lubricant. This is going to go right here, and it's going to prevent your sway bar from squeaking. I was lucky that my sway bar bushing, came with the lubricant. But if yours does not, make sure that it does. And if your sway bar bushings don't come with a lubricant, you're gonna have to go and get it yourself. But just make sure that you have it. What we're gonna do right now is we're going to lube these up so that we can put them on the sway bar. As you can see, I'm working with gloves. I would recommend that so your hands don't get super greasy. Just take the gloves off. Once both your bushings are greased, it is now time to put them on the sway bar. All right, I'm doing the right side first. That's the passenger side. So the way these things go on is you open them at one end. As you see, they split right there. They do that on purpose, so you can slip the bushing over the sway bar, and then you slide it into position, and then you put your bracket on. I can tell you right now already, I can tell this is not going to be easy. All right, so that is what the sway bar bushing looks like when it's on the sway bar. It's this block piece on the bar. You can't see it very well, but it's definitely there. So yeah, I got the other side on, and I'm going to be putting the bracket on now. All right, so here's the bracket. Make sure you remember which side is which. If you don't know, follow these arrows. These arrows should point towards the outside of the wheel well. So we're going to, well, first things first, we're going to pull the sway bar towards us. And then we're going to grab the bushing and make sure that it has followed suit. And we're going to slide the bushing along the sway bar so that it lines up with the original mounting position. There we are. Where's the hole? Find the hole. Make sure the bushing's lined up. Get your bracket, point it outwards, and then put it over your bushing. And there we are. All right, now that I have my bushing bracket in there, let me see if I can get the wing nut. Yes, all right. Yeah, so you're gonna take your wing nuts and you're going to lay them like this way, perpendicular against the car. So the front is that way, the rear is that way. You want it perpendicular from left to right, and you're gonna put them with the wings pointed upward. So they're gonna go in like that. Slide them over the, I did not mean to move that. Put the wing nuts over the hole. The front one is a lot easier than the rear one. I just moved my other one. Let's not do that. Alright, there's one wing nut. And the second one, real tedious. Really tedious. Grab it again. And it's on. Yep, I can't really get the camera in there You really just got to go by feel. You can't see it. But yeah, both your wing nuts are over your bushing bracket. Now you can start screwing on your bracket bolts. All right, so in putting your bolts back for your sway bar mount bushing brackets, the first one you're going to have to bolt it in yourself before you start putting the wing nut on. You want to work it about some of the way through to where on the other side you can feel it poking through the bushing bracket. For some reason, the bolts coming at the front of the car, you have to tighten them with a ratchet first and get them through before you can put the wing nut on them. Now the rear ones, they just go right through, and you can just start hand tightening them with the wing nuts just right away. But the front ones, you gotta bolt them through something first, and then that's when you can get to your wing nut, so you can tighten it. You go in there and feel your finger. I'm almost there. Almost there. Keep tightening until it starts to poke out a little bit so you can line your wing nut. And there you go. It's poking through now. Take your wing nut. Same as the other side. Have it pointing up this way. You can hand tighten just a little bit up to this point as you need to. Yep, and then get your wing nut in there. And there, it looks like I can just hand tighten most of the way on this side. Oh, no, not there. All right. Yep. Keep going with the ratchet. Yep, and that's on. Now let's get the back side, and you're gonna see this is gonna be easier than the front. The hard part is actually getting the wing nut in there because the space is so limited, like I've said many times in this video. So what you may want to do in this case is go around and stand up over there and reach your hand in right here from that side so you can see where you're putting the wing nut, and then come back down and put your bolt in. All right, so I just went ahead and put the wing nut in from the other end like I said I was going to do. And so what you're going to do is take your other hand, hold the wing nut, and you'll be able to stick this thing, you should be able to stick this thing right through if it's aligned. So in this case, I don't know if it is. I don't think it is. No, it's not. Okay. Yep. And as you can see, it just goes straight up. And then you just hand tighten it onto the wing nut. All right, so once you got both sides of your bolts hand tightened, what you're gonna do is you're gonna tighten them in a crisscross pattern, just like you would with a wheel on the car. So what I'm gonna do is do this one first, come over here, do this one second, and then third. Actually, wait, hold on. So first, second, third, and then fourth. So hopefully you get the idea. The reason you want to do this is so when you tighten down your brackets for your sway bar bushings, it leaves even pressure on the sway bar. So on the driver's side, we did the rear nut. So on the passenger side, we're gonna move to the front nut. All right, and then I'm gonna move the other side. I'm gonna do the front bolt on the other side and then the rear bolt on this side. And then our sway bar bushings will officially be on. Thank goodness. One thing I forgot to mention is before you decide everything is finished, you're gonna want to torque those bolts down in the same crisscross pattern like you did. Yeah, you should torque them, but I'm going to torque them per se with the cheater bar. Yep, you want it on there tight. Point we can't move it anymore. That's what I'm doing. Yep. All right, it's as tight as it's gonna go. And we are finally done. Next thing to do is put the wheels on and take this thing out for a test drive, see if anything else is wrong, and to make sure we did our job right. All right, in case you need to know where you need to jack up your Mazda 3, the front end, you're gonna jack it up by this cross member right here. Make sure you're not jacking up on the plastic. You want to jack up on the metal piece right there. And that's how you jack up the Mazda 3, just a side note. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and proceed and get this car on its wheels. All right, back on its wheels. Let's go take it for a little spin. All right, everyone. Well, yesterday I took it out for a spin and came to realize that when I was putting on the passenger side front sway bar bushing on, when I went to pull it, it slid the driver's side sway bar bushing out of the bracket. So I was driving around yesterday and I was wondering why it was there was a banging noise coming from underneath. It was because the sway bar wasn't secured on the passenger side and it was moving around back and forth against the frame. So yesterday I put the car back up and went and tried to fix it, and come to realize that what happens is in there, the way the frame is shaped, where the sway bar sits, the way the bracket sits is on this flat surface, and if you go deeper in there, it kind of slopes down in, and the bushing was stuck deep far in there, like directly basically underneath the engine. So I had to go back in there, pull it all the way out, and try to pull it all the way out, and I got to a point where, once again, where the frame dips, the bushing got stuck. So I had to pull it out, and because it's a polyurethane bushing, which is stiffer, I had to use a lot more effort with my hands to try and pull that thing out. I couldn't fit tools in there or anything, so I had to use both my hands to try and pull that thing out yesterday. And it took me about 2 hours to actually fix that and put everything back together. And I went for another test drive again, and everything was good after that. So it's the next day. I decided at that point in time, it was 5 or 6 o'clock that day, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to just call it a day, and I'm going to work on it the next day. So today's the next day, but the little bit I got the drive on with the bushings, it felt really, really nice. It's a much better improvement than what you might think. It's a much better improvement than what I thought it was going to be, but it really tightens up the front end, which is what I intended. That's what I wanted. But yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and let's put on that rear sway bar. All right, everyone, I got the car up in the air, so let's go underneath and figure out what we're going to be working with. All right, so if we look, here is the rear sway bar. Here's the end link, and it goes up. That is the bushing in the bracket, and then we follow this sway bar, another bushing and bracket, and then the end link over here. So first thing I'm going to do actually is remove the end links. All right, so the nut for the
rear sway bar link is not moving, so I'm gonna go ahead and put some WD-40 on it and let it soak for a minute, and then see if that does the trick. All right, now it's been soaking for a few minutes. We're gonna go ahead and try this again.
All right, now it is time to take the rear sway bar bracket off. Those bolts are 14 millimeter, which does happen to be the same as the sway bar end link bolts. Those are also 14 millimeter if you're interested. So the bottom one will be easy enough, but the top one is going to be difficult because it's pretty deep in there. So what I have is my 14 millimeter socket on my ratchet with an extension. That's what I'm going to have to use to get in there. Just to demonstrate. So, yep, that's what it looks like. And then I'm going to have to find a way to probably use the breaker, the cheater bar, like I've been using throughout this weekend, as usual. So yeah, this might be pretty difficult, but we're going to give it a shot. Yep, exactly what you need. So, pro tip, you're going to be switching out your sway bar bushings or your entire sway bar on a Mazda 3, definitely get a torque wrench or a breaker bar of some sort. All right, that's the first one out. Let's go ahead and get the rest of them. All right, so it seems like in order for me to take the sway bar out, I have to take off the sway bar end links because it's not moving side to side enough to the point where I can slide it out. All right, so here's the old sway bar. Now it's time to assemble and put the new one on. Alrighty, so here is the difference between the old one and that's the new Progress Tech one. So as we can see, the Progress bar has two settings to allow me to adjust between a softer setting and then a stiffer setting. And the stock Mazda one, of course, just has the one hole. But the other thing I noticed is if you look on the sway bar bracket for the Mazda one, it just has that one hole there on the bracket. But then if you look at the Progress one, the hole is oval shaped. So what I'm thinking is that when you adjust the position of the sway bar end link from softer to stiffer, I'm thinking we have to move this up or down. I didn't really think about that before, but I guess that's something we're gonna have to consider. So I'm gonna put the bar on, and then I'm going to bolt it up just to the point where I can still slide this up and down, just in case. And then I'm actually gonna go for the stiffer setting, because going from a 20 millimeter to a 22 millimeter is really not that big of a difference. And I was thinking I would want to have less body roll in the rear. Anyways, that's why I got the sway bar in the first place. So I'm gonna start off actually with a stiffer setting. Progress recommends a softer setting to start off with, but I think I'm gonna go for the stiffer. All right, so the sway bar is assembled. Now it's time to officially put it on the car. All right, so I have all the components just hand tightened and adjusted. So what I decided to do last minute while I was adjusting it is actually put it to the softer setting. And the reason was because before I actually went to put this on, I looked at the Mazda original sway bar again, and it looks like this point matches up with the original Mazda sway bar point, where the sway bar mounts up to the end leg. So I think I'm actually going to start off with that instead. And then I'm going to move the sway bar up all the way, because I believe that's how the original one was. I'm just going to stick with making it as original as possible. This way I can get a baseline, and then if I need to make any adjustments, I can do that later. But yeah, so let's go ahead and tighten everything up and get this car on its wheels. And the install is officially finished. Wheels are on. Let's go take it out for a test drive. All right, so just came back from test driving it. No apparent issues right now whatsoever. Everything seemed to went smoothly. And I gotta say, first impressions, it feels amazing. So the rear end is much tighter, which definitely helps with the front. So the car overall just corners much more flat, and it feels really, really nice. Very planted and secure to the ground. Next thing to do is to take this thing back to the parking lot and compare before and after.